In the era of remakes, reboots, and reimagining, it becomes easy to label remakes as inherently bad, or saying that all remakes will fall in the shadow of the predecessor. The general mindset is that an original movie will push the medium of film forward, but a remake will pull it back. And if you single in on just the bad remakes, you're going to find a collection of pretty bad movies. But today, I want to look at one of the great remakes of a great movie, True Grit by Ethan and Joel Coen, which is an adaptation of Henry Hathaway's 1969 film. I want to begin by looking at why this movie was remade. In full honesty, the original holds up very well. Save for a few characters that may not pass in today's politically correct culture and a slower pace, the movie behaves very similar to a lot of modern movies in terms of narrative structure, and it makes sense. It was released in the late 1960s, at the end of the golden age of Hollywood, as the studio system was falling apart. It was shot on location and acted simultaneously as both a goodbye to the old and a hello to the new. In terms of narrative, it works great. The performances held up pretty well, and although they may be cheesy, there is a charm to them. There wasn't a technical reason to update the film, the landscapes are gorgeous, but instead, it came down from a want to remake it from the Coen brothers, to add more depth to the story, to further develop these characters, and to further explore a film that they love. The Coen brothers have always had an appreciation and a love for old age Hollywood. Look no further than last year's Hail Caesar, as a perfect example of their love and affection for the era. And in their True Grit, they took care to keep the same spirit as the original. There are scenes that are taken shot for shot from the original, and there are conversations that go line for line in both movies.
In your 4 years as U.S. Marshal, how many men have you shot?
Shot or killed?
Oh, let's restrict it to kill so we may have a manageable figure.
Obviously, the narrative is going to stay the same, but there is care and precision taken to ensure that the adaptation pays respect to the original. In a lot of remakes that are being released recently, it seems like the filmmakers are trying to outdo and to beat the original, but in doing so, they lose sight of the purpose of the movie. That never happens in True Grit. It stays true to the original and never tries to add anything to the movie. Instead, it takes what is already there and goes a step further. Above all else, what is consistent throughout the Coen brothers' filmography is great, developed, and memorable characters. And the biggest change seen in their adaptation of True Grit is to further go into much more depth with these characters and look deeper into them. In Hathaway's edition, Maddie Ross is someone who is determined to succeed. She will work hard and will do everything in her power to do so. At the same time, she is somebody who knows her limits. She knows how far she can push herself and stops at that point. In the adaptation, she embodies this to the 10th power. She pushes on and will continue to push until she can push no more. She is smart, she is fast talking, and doesn't let anything get in her way. This makes her fate seem much more fitting. When she falls into the pit with the snake, it is because she overexerts herself. She embodies a trait found within many people who don't know their limits, and that resulting in her getting in trouble. In the original, she seemed to be an almost perfect character, but the adaptation had her much more grounded and more realistic, making it easier for the audience to relate to her. Similarly, in the original, Rooster Cogburn is the ultimate lawman. He does what he wants when he wants. He is the roots of characters like Harry Callan and John McClane. It isn't until he gets to know Maddie better does it become clear that he is broken and vulnerable. Try as he might to write off his past with his family, he can't. He has an empty part of him because he misses his family. He is able to find solace with Maddie and in the end becomes a part of her family. He forms a bond with her that will keep them connected for the rest of eternity. The Coen brothers took a different approach to telling this character. In their vision, he was vulnerable from the start. When we first meet him, he is in an outhouse. He is trapped. He is stuck in a place of vulnerability. Try as he might to put on a hard and rough exterior, inside he is a broken and tragic figure. After he retires from being a marshal and has transitioned into becoming a traveling performer, 25 years later when Maddie goes to meet with him, she finds out that he has passed away 3 days earlier. Although she moves his grave next to hers, they both die alone. It's a darker way to end the movie, but one that humanizes these characters and grounds them back to Earth. The change may be subtle, but it's one of the most important that was made between this adaptation. Across the board, all of the characters have been humanized, especially with Ned Peppers. In the original, when the outlaw gang is ambushed, Pepper's horse is killed. He steals the horse of someone else in the gang, leaving him to die. In the remake, this simply doesn't happen. Peppers may have done bad deeds, but inherently he isn't a bad person. He cares about the life of Maddie and is far from a traditional movie outlaw and a traditional movie antagonist. There's a moral gray area here with this character, as there are with all of the characters in the adaptation. There's a lot more depth with this character, and he's a much stronger villain because you can't just universally hate him. The biggest change that happens in terms of narrative is with LaBeef. In the original, he stays with Rooster and Maddie for the entire quest. In the updated version, he leaves to try and find Chaney himself, but chooses to come back to save Maddie once he realizes that her life is in danger. Despite these characters being at odds earlier, he does what he has to, and in the end, he feels like much more of a hero. The other significant change that has to do with modernizing the story is the Coen brothers tightening up the pacing, shedding about 20 minutes of filler and speeding up the story. Instead of the opening scene full of expository dialogue, we are introduced to this story through a voiceover narration. It's fast, it's smart, and it gets to the point. In addition, the comedic aspect is played up. The original has a sense of humor. There are jokes to be found and they were plentiful. However, the 2010 edition adds more wit through the quick dialogue that makes a Coen brothers movie a Coen brothers movie.
I thought you were going to say the sun was in your eyes. That is to say, your eye.
Now, despite small changes being made, what's important to remember about the adaptation is the respect that is given to the original movie. The movie pays homage to it while also making it a brand new entity. Most remakes are either too close to the original and doesn't add anything of substance, and no, Gus Van Sant color is not substance, or they drift too far away from it, and the original loses their meaning. Joel and Ethan Coen's True Grit managed to find a perfect medium between these two, improving on it where it needed to be improved on, while keeping what made the original great still there. Thank you very much for watching. The Coen brothers never cease to impress. I know I talked about No Country for Old Men about a month ago, but their work offers so much to discuss. Next week we'll be looking at High and Low, an excellent Japanese film noir. That video will be out next Saturday and linked on the right of the screen. On the left is my last video where we looked at Zodiac. Be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.